Eric Thompson, a decorated Air Force veteran and CEO, was humiliated at the airport, accused of faking his first-class ticket, simply because he was black. Reduced to a criminal in front of hundreds, he stood tall, refusing to break. But when the truth about his identity came to light, it left everyone speechless. What happened next will shock even those who've seen it all. Eric Thompson, a tall, composed man in his early 40s, stood with quiet confidence at the bustling Atlanta International Airport. Dressed in a sharp charcoal suit that fit him perfectly, he exuded the kind of polished professionalism that came from years of hard work and discipline. A decorated Air Force veteran and now a thriving entrepreneur, Eric was accustomed to business travel. Today's flight to New York City was no different, another step toward securing a game-changing deal for his burgeoning tech firm. The gate area buzzed with the usual chaos, boarding announcements echoing overhead, impatient travelers tapping their feet, and the hum of conversations mixing with the screech of rolling luggage. Eric handed his neatly printed first-class ticket to the gate agent, Sarah, flashing a polite smile as he prepared to board. He had flown countless times and knew the drill. But today, something shifted. The moment Sarah scanned the ticket, her cheerful expression vanished. She stared at her screen, her brows furrowing into a disapproving line. "Sir, this ticket is invalid," she announced, her tone clipped and suspicious, loud enough for nearby passengers to take notice. Eric's smile faded, replaced by a calm but confused look. "There must be a mistake. Can you check again, please?" Sarah's gaze flicked back to him, now tinged with skepticism. "Sir, this ticket looks fake. Where did you get it?" Her words, weighted with accusation, hit Eric like a blow. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd. Heads turned, curious and judgmental. Eric felt the heat of dozens of eyes on him, but refused to let frustration show. "I bought it directly from your airline's app," he explained, his voice steady. "Here's my confirmation number." Sarah ignored his explanation, her suspicion intensifying. Without further discussion, she gestured to a nearby TSA officer. "We need to verify this passenger's ticket. He's causing an issue," she said sharply, as if his mere presence was disruptive. Within moments, 2 uniformed officers appeared, their stances rigid, hands near their radios. "Sir, step aside while we investigate," one officer said. Eric's jaw tightened, but he complied, maintaining his composure. Nearby, phones appeared as passengers began recording. The implication was unspoken but clear. Black man, fake ticket, trying to scam his way into first class. TSA officers led Eric Thompson to a cordoned-off area near the gate, their hands resting near their radios, as though preparing for something worse. All around him, passengers craned their necks to watch the scene unfold. He could feel the weight of their judgment, a silent verdict, passed without evidence. A father in the crowd tightened his grip on his son's shoulder, as though Eric were a threat. A woman near the boarding line whispered into her phone, casting fleeting, disapproving glances. Every stare, every mutter was a dagger to his pride. But Eric stood tall. Years of military service had taught him to hold his ground, even under fire. One TSA officer, a stocky man with a clipped tone, flipped through Eric's ID and confirmation email as if he were dissecting a puzzle. "Sir, where exactly did you get this ticket?" the officer demanded, suspicion dripping from every word. Eric, though his frustration was starting to bubble beneath the surface, kept his voice measured. "I've already explained. I bought it directly from your airline's app. You can check the confirmation email. My name, Eric Thompson. It matches my ID." He held up his phone, his finger hovering over the confirmation number. The officer didn't respond. Instead, He turned to the side and spoke softly into his radio, deliberately ignoring Eric. The moments felt like an eternity, the whispers and stares pressing in closer. Meanwhile, Sarah, the gate agent, stood nearby, her arms folded and her smug expression impossible to ignore. "Some people just don't know when to quit," she muttered, her words cutting through Eric like shards of glass. Eric's fists curled at his sides. It wasn't just the accusation that stung. It was the cold certainty in her tone. She didn't hesitate. She didn't doubt herself for a second because, to her, the scenario made perfect sense. Black man, fake ticket. Minutes dragged by, stretching into what felt like hours, before a stern-looking supervisor arrived. His graying hair and crisp uniform gave him an air of authority. "What's the issue here?" he asked sharply. Sarah wasted no time, gesturing toward Eric. "He's trying to board with a fake ticket. I flagged it." The supervisor looked over Eric's ID and confirmation email, his gaze narrowing skeptically. "Sir, we're going to need you to explain who you really are." Eric's composure finally cracked. His voice, though controlled, carried the weight of his frustration. "I've told you who I am. Eric Thompson, U.S. Air Force veteran, CEO of a tech company. I paid for that first-class seat, and I have every right to it." The supervisor scoffed dismissively. "A veteran? Sure you are." He turned to Sarah with a wave of his hand. "Call airport security. Let's escort him out." But before Sarah could move, a deep, commanding voice cut through the tense air like a knife. "That won't be necessary." All eyes turned toward the source of the voice. Heads turned as a sharply dressed older man approached. Behind him trailed two younger assistants, one holding a tablet and the other a badge clipped to his belt. The man, clearly someone of influence, fixed his gaze on Eric. "Mr. Thompson, I presume," he said, his voice calm but commanding. Eric turned, recognizing him instantly. Arthur Whitman, chairman of the very airline he was flying with, a man Eric had met just weeks ago during a technology conference. "Mr. Whitman?" Eric responded, surprised but relieved. Arthur's eyes swept over Sarah and the supervisor, both of whom now looked pale. "What's the problem here?" The supervisor stammered, pointing at Eric. "We thought his ticket was fake, sir. He was refusing to cooperate." Arthur raised an eyebrow, his tone icy. "Refusing to cooperate?" He looked at Eric. "Is this true, Mr. Thompson?" Eric shook his head. "No, sir. I handed over my ID and proof of purchase. They refused to believe me." Arthur turned back to Sarah and the supervisor, his voice sharp as a knife. "Do you have any idea who you've just humiliated? This man served his country with distinction. He's a partner of mine. His tech company is set to transform our entire digital infrastructure." The color drained from Sarah's face. The supervisor swallowed hard. "We didn't know." "That's the problem," Arthur cut him off. "You didn't bother to know. You assumed." Passengers murmured, some recording the scene. Arthur turned back to Eric. "I'm deeply sorry, Mr. Thompson. This is unacceptable. I'll personally ensure it never happens again." Arthur motioned to his assistant. "Rebook him on the next available flight, first class, free of charge, and add a lifetime membership to our VIP lounge." As Eric was escorted back to the gate, whispers spread like wildfire. A woman leaned over and whispered, "I can't believe they did that to you." Others nodded in agreement. Eric, though grateful for Arthur's intervention, knew this moment wasn't about him. It was bigger. Before boarding, Eric turned to face Sarah, who now stood quietly, avoiding his gaze. "Next time," he said firmly, "treat everyone with the same respect you'd show someone like him." He nodded toward Arthur. "Because you never know who you're looking at." As Eric finally settled into his first-class seat, he exhaled. The sting of the day lingered, but so did his resolve. Outside the window, the plane began taxiing down the runway. The world was watching. Social media was already buzzing with videos and stories. By the time the plane lifted into the sky, the incident was trending. Airline humiliates black veteran over fake ticket. Truth shocks everyone. Back on the ground, Arthur issued a public apology. Policies were reevaluated, employees retrained. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And Eric Thompson, a man of quiet strength, knew one thing for sure. His battle wasn't over, but he'd just won an important victory for those who came after him.